Mike Figueredo says why Joe Biden will probably lose to Trump in November. If I were you and I could find anyone who wanted to take a bet on who's going to win in November, I would bet everything I have that Donald Trump is going to win, and I'll show you why. But let's start with Mike's take on it.
This poll is very bad news for Joe Biden, because what does this indicate to us?
He's talking about the ABC Washington Post poll that we've been talking about for a few days now.
There's a lack of enthusiasm in a general election. Turnout is low. Now, riddle me this. When turnout is low, who's more likely to benefit from that? Democrats or Republicans? Republicans. Because the same loyal Republicans who vote every 2 years are going to come out again and loyally support Donald Trump. But Democrats win when they get out the vote, when they register new voters and expand the base, attract independents, go after non-voters. But if you have a nominee at the top of your ticket who's not able to do that, that is a very bad sign. That's an indicator of what's to come. Another 4 years of Donald Trump. Now, ABC News puts these numbers into context for us. Perhaps the Democrats' biggest risk is under the surface, in Trump's big advantage in backers who are very enthusiastic about supporting him. Strong enthusiasm for a candidate can help boost turnout on Election Day, a must-have particularly for Democrats, who rely more on motivating less frequent voters to come to the polls. There's deja vu in these results. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton found herself in largely the same position 4 years ago. She too had a slim lead among Democrats for the nomination and ran essentially evenly with Trump among registered voters. And she lagged in enthusiasm with a low of 32%, very enthusiastic, in September 2016. Biden is 8 points under that mark now. And the fact that Joe Biden is 8 points behind where Hillary Clinton was, and she lost to Donald Trump, Biden's probably going to lose.
Biden's probably gonna lose? Biden absolutely is gonna get his ass handed to him. And the DNC insiders know this, but they would still rather lose to Trump than to get Bernie Sanders anywhere near the White House.
Biden's folks want Sanders out, and they want him out now, Sagar.
Yeah, so Biden allies, this is per these two great reporters, are privately grumbling that Sanders will not get out of the presidential race, and that they are worried they're
privately grumbling by talking to reporters like Amy Barnes and Jonathan Easley.
Leaking it out to anybody who will listen, that they are repeating the problem of 2016, when a long primary fight was seen as hurting Hillary Clinton, the eventual Democratic nominee. So they're already laying the groundwork, it seems, Crystal, for Sanders stayed in too late. He bashed Biden. Actually, I don't even think he said a word about Biden.
I wish he bashed Biden.
Yeah. I was saying in the last month, I actually can't think of a real attack that he's leveled against Biden.
Or really ever.
Or really ever. And yeah, broadly, they're just waiting. They're waiting to write the exact same script that they did in 2016, which is that Bernie was in the race for too long. His presence was divisive. He didn't do enough to get me elected. When I think we are all fairly certain that whenever the campaign starts back up, I'm sure, and if Bernie is not the nominee, he's going to be stumping all he can for Joe Biden. The question is why won't his people follow him? Well, we know, because people don't support people just because of their last name.
Right.
Or they're like, I'll follow you to the ends of the earth. There's a reason that a poll shows 15% of Bernie supporters will vote for Trump. We don't know how many of them will stay home. I suspect it will actually be a pretty substantial margin. There you go. There's a reason for that. It's because they supported that campaign for the ideas behind it. And if Biden does nothing to espouse those ideas, Bernie saying, yeah, you should go vote for him, it's not going to do it.
It's not going to do it, but they would never take that responsibility onto themselves.
They're already writing the obituary. It's like somebody isn't even dead yet, but they know they're going to die, so they're already getting ready. Biden lost because those mean Bernie bros wouldn't come around and support him in the general election. A lot of those Bernie bros are sisters, and all of us know that Joe Biden isn't going to do anything to further our causes. So you comfy Dems who are giving us Joe Biden, you need to know we're going to hold you accountable later. Everyone's screaming their heads off about party unity, and for good reason. Let's see how the Republicans and the Democrats stack up at this point in the election cycle.
What's really important for me when we're looking at these party division scores are where each base views its own status. And right now, Republicans see their own party as 54% more unified than the past and only 16% less. And Democrats were at 45 to 23. So much less view of their own unity over the course of the last few months. And this is critical going into this election season, partly because it is going to prevent some elements of the Democratic Party from getting fully engaged in their nominee. And the crisis, currently, the healthcare crisis that we have going on in this country with the pandemic is preventing many primaries from happening. Right? We're pushing off the primary season. Bernie Sanders refuses to get out of the race and give Biden a clear path. And so the Democratic Party is going to be left in this limbo for months, it appears now, as opposed to many who assumed the Democratic Party was going to be out of the woods here a couple weeks ago. And what this ultimately means is that there are portions of the Democratic vote who are Bernie Sanders supporters. They tend to be younger. They are more populist, obviously. And they are not going to be behind Biden in the same numbers that Democrats expect young voters to be behind him. Some of them are not going to participate in the fall because of their disappointment over how their candidate was treated by the Democratic establishment. And another portion of them are certainly going to be available to the Trump campaign, given the correct messaging. So the view that this unity will just occur naturally for the Democratic Party solely because of hatred over Donald Trump is, I think, a misplaced one. We have seen time and time again the presidential campaigns make the mistake of thinking that, well, we'll unify because we'll all rally around a common enemy. And when you look at the 2004 re-election for George Bush, the hatred that Democrats had for George Bush at the time did not create that same necessary rally around Kerry effect. Republicans believed that the strong dislike of President Obama in the re-election in 2012 would be enough to get that base unified and turned out. And it's not. It's never enough just to hate the other side. So these Democratic Party lack of unity scores within their own voters is a real problem for the Biden campaign, who will be ultimately the nominee at some point this summer. But it's going to be a real problem for his campaign going into the fall.
So he's just coming right out and saying that for sure Biden is going to be the nominee. I believe the pandemic has given us a window of opportunity here, and I think that the Bernie Battalion ought to jump on this opportunity and make sure that the comfy boomers know that we know that giving us Biden is giving us Trump. They haven't shown us at all that they're willing to blink so far, but who knows? The test isn't whether they have good morals or if they're reasonable people. The test is how much do they hate Donald Trump. And if they truly, truly hate him, what they're seeing from us is that they're going to get him unless they unite behind Bernie.
The Republican Party, there is a broad tent of people who really have no choice. If you think about Black voters, for instance, the Republican Party is always, for the most part, is not seen as a viable choice. So you have even divisions within Black people who are Democrats, some who are conservatives who would still nevertheless never vote for Republican, those who are moderate and those who are more left-leaning. So it's almost by nature that the Democratic Party will be more divided. And I think this moment in time right now, it makes those divisions very stark. And it's also illuminating the problems that a centrist candidate might have when it comes to voter enthusiasm. There's a Washington ABC poll that came out on Sunday that showed that Donald Trump had almost or over twice as much support among his supporters than Joe Biden, or I should say twice as many were very enthusiastic about his candidacy compared to Joe Biden. So even among Joe Biden supporters, there is still a lack of enthusiasm, and that can be, that can show a significant problem because even Hillary Clinton, who lost in 2016, had more enthusiasm among her supporters.
And you look at all of this, and you see why that they might want to, think a little bit about their Democratic nominee. We have a new analysis out at the Hill of a Grinnell College national poll. It was released this morning. It shows that 55% of likely voters who said that they would back Biden say that their minds are made up, and that 43% could be persuaded to support a different candidate. Okay, so let's compare that to Donald Trump. Well, he holds much stronger sway of his supporters. 82% of the likely voters who say they will support Trump say that their minds are made up. Only 17% say that they will still be persuadable. So literally almost half of the people who are like, yeah, I might vote for Biden, could be persuaded to support Donald Trump or another likely candidate, whereas the margin on that for Trump is way lower.
Right.
Pair that with what we talked about earlier on the enthusiasm gap in their supporters. This is a disaster for Joe Biden.
And they did the enthusiasm question in this poll as well. So this is new. We brought you numbers from a different poll earlier this week. In this particular poll, 55% of Trump supporters said they're very enthusiastic in their support, while only 28% of Biden supporters say that they are very enthusiastic in their support. So yeah, when you see those numbers, if you're a Biden ally, if you're the Democratic establishment, you're already trying to explain what's going on, and they'll never do any sort of self-reflection or accountability. So they got to blame Bernie for it. It's all his fault for daring to stay in the race. I mean, we should point out Joe is leading Trump in this poll. He's leading Trump in most of the polls, although we're seeing in a lot of them that margin is starting to narrow. And if you compare it to 2016, Hillary was up by a lot.
She was up by far more
at this point.
Dun, dun, dun. You can't keep pretending, if you're a Biden supporter, that he's going to beat Donald Trump. It ain't going to happen.